ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ Namaste, all of you. Welcome back to the final portions of the Introduction to Vedanta series. We are presently going through the summary of Tattvabodha. Tattvabodha is a primer text on which Swami Paramarthananda, our dear Guru, based his Introduction to Vedanta series. He taught this course keeping in mind the main topics presented in Tattvabodha and added a few more important topics which he thought would provide a total picture of the spiritual roadmap to the serious and diligent spiritual seeker. As we all have observed, Swamiji has repeatedly emphasized the importance of studying the Tattvabodha or even revising the Tattvabodha in order to get familiar with the technical terms and terminologies presented therein, which he considers will prove useful to a student when he or she studies the advanced texts like Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, or even some Prakarana Granthas that would be required to clarify the scriptural teaching. Tattvabodha is known for its simplicity in presenting very profound topics. They can be easily grasped by a beginner. Topics such as the qualifications required to prepare oneself for getting into deeper scriptural and spiritual inquiry. Then it talks about the analysis of the individual, proceeding further to the analysis of the total. Then it talks about the essential oneness of the individual and the total. And finally, the knowledge of the oneness of the individual and total, and the resulting fruit of gaining that knowledge. These topics are elaborately dealt with in more advanced Vedantic texts, for which one needs to get not only introduced to these topics and the technical jargon that are introduced during the course of studying Tattvabodha, but also use this exposure in understanding the communication of the core subject matter when it is communicated by our gurus and the Shastras. So, Tattvabodha, the study of Tattvabodha is important from two angles. One is to understand the topics involved in a systematic manner and to expose oneself to the technical jargon that are presented beautifully during the course of studying Tattvabodha. Swamiji, as is his usual practice, has presented in detail the topics under Introduction to Vedanta and is now giving us a summary of Tattvabodha, on which he based the Introduction to Vedanta series. We have completed looking at the topic of the qualifications required by a spiritual seeker and how those qualifications need to be acquired. We have also completed looking at the analysis of the individual, namely Vyashti. To quickly sum up what we went through in the analysis of the individual, for ease of understanding, the physical component of the individual is divided into two main categories: a body centric or texture centric classification and a function centric classification. We must keep in mind that we had learned previously that an individual can be broadly divided into two distinct aspects: the physical or material component or aspect and the spiritual component, the Anatma Amsha and the Atma Amsha. Every individual is a mixture of both. So the physical component of the individual, as we saw, is divided into two main categories: the body centric or texture centric classification and a function centric classification. In the body centric classification, the material component is divided into three distinct bodies, namely the gross, subtle, and the causal bodies, based on the varying degrees of the fineness of matter similar to how fabrics are classified by texture. The function centric classification categorizes the physical or material component into five layers: the anatomical layer, the physiological layer, the psychological layer, the intellectual layer, and the subconscious layer. Whether the division is texture based, that is, concerning the three bodies, or function based, concerning the five layers, they define the physical or the material aspect of the individual. Then we saw that the second aspect of the individual is the spiritual component, the consciousness principle or the Chaitanya Amsha. It is different from the three bodies as well as the five layers and is aware of them. It is called the witness consciousness, the Sakshi Tattvam or the Chaitanya Tattvam. Then we looked at the five aspects of this Chaitanya Tattvam, the five features of this Chaitanya Tattvam or the consciousness principle. Thus, the individual was divided into the material and the spiritual parts. The material is technically called Anatma, and the spiritual part is called Atma. Atma is also known as Brahman. This is the second topic of Tattvabodha, the analysis of the micro or the Vyashti. Let us now move on to the analysis of the total or the Samashti. This topic involves the study or the inquiry into the Jagat, which is called Jagat Vichara or Srishti Vichara. Jagat meaning the total, the totality or the universe. And Jagat Vichara means the analysis of the macro or the universe. And what did we study in this portion, which we have gone through earlier? The most important thing we learned was that the universe is never created. The universe is never created. This is a fundamental principle that we have to receive and assimilate. It is futile to ask questions like, who created the world? Or why was the world created? Because the universe is not a created entity. This is due to the law of conservation of matter, which states that matter cannot be created or destroyed. According to Tattvabodha, the universe has always existed, but its form has changed. This must be firmly registered to understand our scriptural approach to the idea of creation. The universe has always existed, but its form has changed. The universe is presently manifest and perceptible, whereas earlier it existed in a latent, unmanifest form. The universe is presently manifest and perceptible, whereas earlier it existed in a latent, unmanifest form. This potential state of creation is the causal universe or Maya. We will pick up the thread of this portion of Swamiji's summary in the upcoming capsule and take it forward. Hari Om.